Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha with Ice Cream Fitness here. And last month I did a video on how to spot fake naturals. And that video had quite an effect. I got a huge amount of support for it. I think I gained over 1,000 subscribers within 24 hours. And a lot of competitive natural bodybuilders and athletes actually sent me messages thanking me for making that video. On the other hand, a number of competitors, and it's interesting that a lot of them run in the same circles, so they probably all help each other cheat on their drug tests and shit, publicly denounced me, made all sorts of ad hominem attacks, many of which were not even true and were completely irrelevant to the topic. So they attacked me personally rather than try to discredit anything I actually said directly. And then on top of that, a lot of their fanatical fans and followers sent me death threats, threatened to kill me, threatened to kill members of my family, purely for stating the truth in a YouTube video and just putting out information and even my opinions in a YouTube video. These people threatened to kill people like my mother, my wife, my children. I don't even have any children, but somebody threatened to chop my children up into little pieces. And so all I have to say to all those people who publicly denounced me or who sent me the death threats, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. It's time for part 2. But hold on, let me give you guys a bicep shot first. Alright, right up off the bat, I want to say something. One of the biggest things, when I made this last video, people tried to say that, oh, he's just jealous, he's just jealous. Well, first of all, I'm not a competitive bodybuilder anymore. I used to be years ago. I never won a show, and I never really thought that I had potential to go pro anyways. But I did enjoy doing it. It was fun. I'm not particularly the most genetically gifted bodybuilder, I admit that. I don't bodybuild anymore. I train for powerlifting, and I do plan on winning and taking first place at a lot of meets. I plan on going to the national championships here in the UK next year. So that is where my training focus is. And people who are saying, well, he's just jealous, he's saying this because he's jealous and he can't accomplish anything. Well, if that's the case, then why have I previously said that other people who have surpassed me personally are natural in videos? And I'll give you 2 examples. Let's go with the bodybuilding route. I previously, before making that video, I said that I'm about 90% certain that Chris Jones is natural. And I think it's pretty obvious to everybody here that Chris Jones has a better physique than me. I don't think many people are going to argue against that fact. So if I'm saying that because someone looks better than me, then they must not be natural, then why am I saying that he's natural when he clearly has a better physique than I do? And let's go with the powerlifting. I know someone personally who I have said I am 90% sure they're drug-free. He's the owner of my gym. He is a British national champion and record holder in powerlifting. His name is Henry Tosh. And right now he weighs 8 kilos less than me. He can out-bench me and out-deadlift me. Period. So, let's jump into this and approach this from another angle. I'm not going to give you guys examples of fake natties. I'm going to save that for future parts of these series. Instead, what I want to focus on is this idea of both body weight and how much lean body mass a frame can hold. And I'm going to give you guys some sources as I do this, as I get into it. I'm going to give you information put out by very, very respected and renowned experts who have their own ideas from working with top-level athletes, top-level natural bodybuilders, and so on, and taking measurements and things of what they think the limits are for the genetically gifted in terms of holding muscle on their frame. And it's going to shock a lot of people because a lot of natural bodybuilders, or people who claim natural, carry 30 pounds more muscle mass than what these experts say that their frame can hold, even if they're genetically gifted. So let's step back and let's look at previous eras in bodybuilding. Now, for those who are not aware, steroids have been part of the IFBB since it was started. The very first Mr. Olympia, Larry Scott, admitted to using Dianabol. He was a Dianabol user. That was his drug of choice. So from the very first Mr. Olympia on, we have steroids. And it's always been an accepted part of the sport of bodybuilding. Natural bodybuilding is actually a fairly new phenomenon. This is something we've only really had for a couple decades, as far as it being something that's actually organized and competitive and called natural bodybuilding. So you have Larry Scott there. Now if we go back and we look around 1980-ish, we have an individual by the name of Frank Zane. And the first picture I'm going to put down below is going to be some pictures of Frank Zane. He won the Mr. Olympia 3 times, and he was 5'9", and he was 185 pounds when he won the Mr. Olympia. Now, by a lot of people's standards, that isn't steroid big, but the reality is Frank Zane used steroids. He used a lot of steroids. And in fact, steroids have not changed since his era. Growth hormone has changed, insulin has changed, IGF-1 has changed, prostaglandins have changed. All sorts of peptides have changed, but the anabolic steroids are the same. We don't have new steroids. We might have new esters attached to them, but the same basic steroids existed that everybody uses today. These guys during that era, including Arnold's day, including Frank Zane's day, they all had testosterone, Dianabol, Anavar, Deca, Primobolan, Trenbolone. All of these popular drugs that everybody uses still today in the pros, they had all this stuff. And they could buy it all legally. It was legal for them to buy, and they had human-grade pharmaceutical stuff. So actually, a lot of their drugs are better than the shit people are using today. Let's just be honest here. So, they had access to all of this. Pretty much everybody at the Mr. Olympia was on gear. Frank Zane was on gear. And he ripped up contest dry, shredded to the bone at 185 pounds. So put that in perspective here. And that's a steroid-using Mr. Olympia, 3-time Mr. Olympia, 185 pounds. And if you go back and look before, from 1979 and before, and all these guys were on gear, there was 2 different classes. You had the over 200 pounds and the under 200 pounds at the Mr. Olympia, and half of the field was under 200 pounds, and they were all on gear. And you can go pull pictures of these guys, stats on these guys, you can see what they look like. And these are steroid users who trained their asses off and probably had pretty good genetics. Then when you go forward to the 80s and the 90s, if you guys go and pull statistics, you'll be surprised how many guys were around 200 pounds or less who placed in the top 10 in the Mr. Olympia during those 2 decades. Before we had 1995 and on, where it became about the mass monsters, a good percentage of the field placing in the top 10 in the Mr. Olympia was 205 pounds or less. And there were guys as low as down in the 170s who were placing 6th and 7th at the Mr. Olympia through those eras. And these were all steroid users. And in fact, if you pull, and I'm going to link it next, if you scroll down the page to go to the 1988 Mr. Olympia, that was the last one where they did official weigh-ins after 1979. And there are guys under 200 pounds there, and there's quite a few guys in the low 200s. And again, these were all heavy steroid users. These guys are serious, top-level bodybuilders, going to win. Steroids are allowed, and everybody used them. What I'm saying to people is that if you are 5'9" and you're 200 pounds in contest condition, there is no way you're natural. I don't care how good your genetics are. If you are ripped to shreds at 5'9", 5'10", and you are 200 pounds, I'm going to say even 195, you're right there at the size of contenders for the Mr. Olympia title in the 80s and 90s when they had all the same steroids we have today. Just because you don't use growth hormone and insulin doesn't mean that you're natural. And it seems that a lot of people almost think of it that way. What we consider oftentimes naturally obtainable standards are steroid standards. It's just that people assume that steroid standards are the big boys who have amazing genetics for size, and they are shotgunning tons of steroids, more than you guys could probably afford. I'm talking 5,000 to 10,000 milligrams a week, plus 100 units of insulin a day, plus 20 units of growth hormone a day, IGF-1. Some of these guys have $50,000 a year drug bills or more. And those are the big boys. But the guys who are using steroids are oftentimes able to pass off as natural because the standards have been so skewed. And I'm talking guys who are on grams a gear oftentimes pass as natural. And people actually believe them. So the last piece of evidence that I want to point out, I'm going to link down below off Lyle McDonald's website. And you've got information from 4 different guys there, and Lyle creates quite a good argument. And whether you like Lyle or not, or his personality, because let's be honest, he can be a shithead online. He's a smart guy. He is very thorough with his research, and he is generally dead on the money with his research, and when he says stuff, he usually produces data to back it. And so you've got Lyle there. He links Alan Aragon's work, Martin Burkham, and Casey Butt. Now these are four very, very respected people who have done tons of research. And they discuss natural potential there. And then what I think is interesting, Lyle creates the argument for you that for the people who are getting upset at the numbers that Casey Butt and Martin Burkham's charts produce, he points out that you're not going to be the genetic exception. These charts assume you are already among the genetic elite because their numbers, the top end numbers on their charts and their formulas for how much muscle and lean body mass your frame can hold were taken from people with well above average genetics. They were taken from top level natural bodybuilders or top level bodybuilders who claims to be natural. Which even goes back to the question of we don't even have proof that these guys were natural, but they claimed natural and they competed in natural feds. So they represent the pinnacle of what can be achieved naturally. But in the last decade, since they did all this material, the guys have gotten a lot bigger. And now we've got guys in natural shows who are bigger than a lot of the guys competing in the top 10 in the 1990s Mr. Olympia. They're holding more lean body mass and more body weight while shredded at the same height as guys who were placing in the top 10 of the Mr. Olympia just in the 90s, who were on tons of gear. These guys are sometimes 10 pounds heavier than them now, claiming natural. But when they pulled their stuff, these guys were all claiming natural, and so that represents the pinnacle of what really good genetics and hard work can achieve. So the odds are, statistically, the other 99% of people will never hit the top end of that chart, of either one of their charts. So check those charts out, plug the formulas in. Those will give you a realistic, unbiased, scientifically based idea of what your frame can hold in terms of muscle mass if you have really good genetics. And if you don't, it's probably going to be 10 to 15 pounds lower. If you have terrible genetics or you don't want to train super hard, expect to hold 10 to 15 pounds less muscle than what those charts will actually show, without drugs. Now, that is a cold, hard reality, and I'm not doing this to be mean or to encourage anyone to use drugs, but it is about giving people realistic expectations and putting out the truth and just trying to show people what the reality is of this and how much they've been conned and bullshitted over the years. So it's about it just revealing truth. And now obviously I have my own political and social agendas behind this, but I don't consider them to be negative, and I've made those clear in other videos. So my regular subscribers, particularly in my Gear Talk series, already know what I'm all about. They have a pretty good idea of why I do this outside of the truth. I obviously have my own agenda, but I don't hide it. I'm pretty open about it. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I think I'm probably going to do another video on this topic every single month for a little while, and I'll just live with the death threats and the detractors. So I hope this has been informative, and I will talk to you next time.